in verse 5, it gets really weird. It says, when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And it's interesting. I've seen it how I think we look at worship in a minimized lens.
Mm-hmm.
I think by and large, most people think worship is praise is a fast song and worship is a slow song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, that's not.
Where does it come from?
Yeah, it's like praise is the exaltation of what God has done. Worship is the exaltation of who God is.
Amen.
But I make a sound in my worship when I am obedient to the call and the purpose of my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so what the enemy is doing through Nebuchadnezzar then is he is replacing. When you hear this sound, you're actually stop whatever it is you're doing and bow down and revert and divert your worship, because I can be a stay-at-home dad, and that is my worst. If I'm called to do everything unto the Lord, right? Then me going to my 9 to 5, if that's where he's placed me there on purpose for a purpose. He's placed me there to be an influence into the world around me. And so when I'm obedient to doing that job unto the Lord, that is worship. But
Absolutely.
the enemy comes in and subverts and says, when you hear this, when I distract you with this thing, it'll stifle your true worship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reading that and I'm like, man, how many distractions do I have in my life? How many sounds do I have in my life that are actually stopping my true worship and diverting that worth, the assignment of worth, to something else? Yep. And I was reading that. I was actually reading that before we got on. I was like, man, I've got so many. This is why it's upside down, because I'm supposed to be, everything I do should be worship. Taking care of my wife, I'm going to go home, and I told her, I said, hey, I call shotgun on the kitchen and the dishes, right? You go, you've had a long day, I'm going to come in here. Well, when I get in there and I'm cleaning baby bottles, that's worship. But so many times I can get so distracted from these moments of living a life of worship because a sound is distracting me and it's diverting what I'm putting worth into. I don't want to take up all the time talking. I have the gift of gab. I'm sorry.
That's good.
Well, let's talk about that. The obedience, the worship, because that's going to cover the next set of verses here, starting in verse 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And in this study, we're going to find the Fantastic Four, as we've called them here on the podcast before. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, 3 of the 4 are fixed to be put to the test in their faith, right?
Yes.
Do they really serve the God that they say they serve? And are they willing to lay it all down in obedience to the King Nebuchadnezzar, right? And how many times in our lives are we called to actually lay our lives down for Christ?
Sure.
It almost seems like a misnomer almost, because we live in a world that is so far removed from reality. But if you go outside the walls of the United States, that reality is very real, right? They really fight every day, hand and limb, for Christ. Yeah. Well, that's what we're going to find out here starting in verse 8.